We are shortly going to start the next academic talk.
Yes, I am here.
Is Kapil Kapoor, and for singing, it's my pleasure to invite my esteemed colleague, Dr. Pawan Kumar. Dr. Pawan Kumar is working as
Not Kapil Kumar.
at the Northern Regional Language Center, Patiala. I request Dr. Pawan to introduce Professor Kapil Kapoor. Thank you, sir. डॉक्टर कपिल कपूर जिन्होंने ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਜੋ ਮੌਕਾ ਮੇਰੀ ਸੰਸਥਾ ਨੇ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰ ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਟ ਦਾ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਕਪਿਲ ਕਪੂਰ ਜੀ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਨਾਮ ਜਿਹਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਜਾਣ ਪਛਾਣ ਦਾ ਮੁਹਤਾਜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਗੋਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰੀ ਸੰਸਥਾ ਹੈ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਕਪਿਲ ਕਪੂਰ ਹੈਜ਼ ਬੀਨ ਟੀਚਿੰਗ ਐਟ JNU Delhi. He was dean at the School of Language, Literature and Cultural Studies. He served as visiting fellows in India and as well as in foreign countries also. He is member of so many committees and boards. He has worked as chairperson of our prestigious institute, Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla. Previously, he was chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi Antarashtriya Vishwavidyalaya, Hindi Vishwavidyalaya, Bharta. He worked on Indian grammatical tradition very thoroughly. His major works are language, linguistics, and literature, the Indian perspective, literary theory, Indian conceptual framework, dimensions of Panini grammar, text and interpretation, the Indian tradition, Indian knowledge system. He served as editor-in-chief for Encyclopedia of Hinduism in 11 volumes. With these few words, I want to introduce Captain Kapil Kapoor, and I hand over the mic to Dr. Kapil Kapoor. Thank you.
Do I start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. सबको मेरा नमस्कार. I see many friends. I see Uday Narayan Singh ji, I think. I see Narayan Chaudhary ji and very many other friends, I'm sure. Though I can't see them, but I think I can feel the presence. जैसे मैंने कहा नमस्कार, ये subject decolonizing the Indian mind or the mind, it's now, I think this has been talked about a lot. I myself have talked about it at least 3 times, 3 or 4 times. The first time I spoke was in 2001, and then in 2008, and then in 2011, and I think after that, I think one more. Every time, I think 2019, and every time I have been trying to examine this question from different angles. That is, what is a colonized mind? How is the Indian mind colonized? Is the mind of all Indians colonized? Or is it the mind of only some Indians that is colonized? And what is the cause of this subjugation of the mind? And or causes, cause or causes? And have we tried since 1947, have we really tried to think about it, about the single major cause, and tried to do something about it? In a 1930s article, Anand Kumaraswamy had a wonderful 7-page statement on education in India. And in that very rich discourse, he says that the one single cause why India remains subjugated physically, to the British, and doesn't seem to be coming out of its somnambulism. Why it has lost all its vitality and energy, and that single cause is the education. As he said it, that what the for good reason and maybe sincerely, what the British educationists were thinking of was to create a new Hindu, create a new Hindu who was scientific, atheistic, secular, as against a theistic, deeply spiritual, reason oriented, but not considering reason superordinate, having a kind of value system, a philosophy, which is other directed philosophy, which looked upon all phenomena as something subjective. From that, through education, they tried to create a new Hindu. The project, any such project, may appear to succeed for some time, but is bound to fail at the end. The, the Norman French, after the Battle of Hastings 1066, dominated the British. French became the language of administration, of art and culture, and the native language, the English, the Anglo-Saxon, became the language of the poor, language of those who were not in the major cities, who were not landlords, who were not the lords, but who were the feudal people, feudal workers on the feudal estate. And it remained from 1066, it remained almost for 300 years the dominant language. So they tried to change the mentality of the British. It was only in, I think, 1353, nearly 300 years later, that the British for the first time framed a law in English. For 300 years, it was all French. But if you read people like Dryden, or if you read the history of English drama, you find that the British, in spite of 300 years of French education, French training, they remained British. They emerged as British in the early 17th century, 16th century. For all the influence that they had undergone, their drama remained characteristically tragicomic, tragi-comedy. They didn't go in for either Molière, nor did they go for Sophocles, the Greek. So their characteristic vritti, their nature, it remained intact. So such processes, the Russian court was dominated by the French in 19th century, but we all know how it has come out of it. Hopefully, we will also finally come out of it. The process seems to be slow, but let me address myself to the first question. What is a colonized, how is an Indian mind a colonized mind? I must say that as at one time, about 100 years ago when I was young, I used to travel across this country, so small places, villages, all over India. I traveled extensively, northeast, south, north, northwest. Made it a point to interact with the people in small hamlets, in rural areas, at the tea shops, near the railway stations and all that. And from 2010 to 14, I was lucky to be in a rural girls' university in Haryana. And as late as 2010 and 11, and that place is not more than 100 kilometers from Delhi. From Delhi. Delhi is a metropolis. And the all metropolis, the four metropolis, are the god of the colonized minds. 100 miles from the 100 kilometers, not even miles, was this place. And I found that inside the university, even inside the university, you had problem communicating in English. But when you came out of the university and crossed the road and sat down on the bench of a shop or a tea shop, I found that I belonged to an island. My university was an island where we spoke a different language, where our vocabulary of thought was different, our value system was different, and what we were teaching to our young girls was something that their mothers will not understand. You see? But the girl will go home and say, Ma, I'm doing this, and I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and I will reach this place and this point. And the mother will say, all right, पर अभी तो थोड़ी चैन से बैठ जाओ, शांति से बैठ जाओ. So there you discover when you travel around the country, you have to qualify this. Colonized Indian mind, it's a kind of educated Indian mind. Now, I mean, we will then begin to question even the word educated, as Anand Kumaraswamy in another essay, he said educated Indians, and then he gave a footnote. This is how the victims of Indian education are described. The victims of Indian education are described. Many times in the rural context, when I will take up, expressions which were very at the center of intellectual activity of the universities, like multiculturalism, trying to explain to the people around the university, I was hard put to find a word. कि इसकी क्या मैं अनुवाद क्या करूं, क्या बताऊं? बहु संस्कृतिवाद. When I spoke that, one person said, sir, बहू की संस्कृति तो हमारी संस्कृति है, the daughter-in-laws. I mean, they won't understand. Also, this multiplicity, like if you tell the people there, कि आपके village में, in your village, you have Brahmins, yes. You have Jats, yes. You have Muslims, yes. You have Dalits, yes. You have landlords and you have workers, yes. So many different types of people, it's a big problem. They will say, what is the problem? For them, it is no problem. They just live together. But in JNU, we used to have very elaborate, seminars and conferences on this multiplicity and social conflict and societal divide and all that, with our social sciences students being sent with a questionnaire. The questionnaire always tending towards different identities, ethnic identity, religious identity, linguistic identity. That is, the questionnaire itself divided the people. Never did the question appear that when a girl gets married in the village, or when someone dies in the village, then what happens? Then all these people, the ethnically, linguistically, religiously divided villagers, when the daughter of the village is getting married, in other words, they never try to find out how it functions as a unit. So I must say that when we talk of decolonization or colonized mind, we have to qualify this. It is the educated Indians who have been disaffiliated, you know, that's a disaffiliated from their self. In what sense? So let's now, because the topic is, and they are, it's important because the small 10% of people, 12% of people, you know, they are the rulers. They rule the country. They frame the policies for 90% of people, 80% of people. And they look with great condescension on the masses. You see, the masses have to be because they are themselves in one way or another, they are Darwinistic, you know, social Darwinism, political Darwinism, or whatever different form, political Darwinism, given to evolution and Darwinism. They tend to believe that those who don't wear clothes like they do, don't speak the language that they do, well, there I think they need to be brought up. Brought up. Now, this evolution and Darwinism is, as you realize, it springs from the roots of Western civilization. Well, Western civilization has three roots, not one. It has the Greek pagan root, it has the Hebraic root, and it also has the Christian root. But the Old Testament is shared by all, including the Islamic. The Old Testament, Deuteronomy, where God says to Adam, I made you in my image, the fish of water and fowl of the air are for you to enjoy, exercise dominion on them. Because you are in my image, so you are the top, you are the best, you are the most evolved. Unfortunately, even Aristotle, in his Poetics, tends to be evolutionary. He says that because tragedy as a form comes the last in Greek literature, so it is the most evolved form. And his problem was Homer. If you read Aristotle's Poetics, his problem is Homer, because Homer's epic somehow cannot be dismissed. Of course, tragedy, Sophocles, great trilogy, fine. But how do you dismiss Homer's epic? And then, Aristotle talks about the reading experience and the auditing experience, the viewing experience. And he says that tragedy has this duality, that it is an auditing experience and it is also a reading experience. And as auditing experience, therefore, as it is duality, it is superior to the epic, which is basically an auditing experience, because Homer's Iliad, as we know from Plato's Aeon dialogue, the one that it used to be sung, it was an auditing experience. So this Darwinistic evolutionary attitude that masses have to be, हमारा शब्द कहना नहीं चाहिए क्योंकि बड़ा पॉपुलर शब्द है और गवर्नमेंट का शब्द है, विकास, development. Change and progress are not the same thing. And progress and development are also not the same thing. Because development, what we consider as development, it may be double-edged. For example, with the young people getting educated, coming out of their villages, getting jobs in the cities, hiring 2-bedroom apartments or 3-bedroom as they evolve, find it difficult to bring their parents there. Now these young people have developed, they are now different. They wear different clothes, they eat better, but they may be able to keep a dog, pet dog, but they are not able to keep the parents. So this kind of what happens to the society, even technology, when we have thresher, the thresher cuts an acre of wheat field in a day. And so that's a great advantage. Everybody is now, hiring thresher. But the thresher takes away the job of 20 young people. It takes away their job. And then all other things, and you see that then the youth migrating to the towns, getting some white collar, some small job, and all the problems of the urban settlement and urban life, and the urban problems, crime and everything, and all those things. So the information revolution, IT was welcomed as something like, it has come to democratize knowledge. And it is a great blessing. But from there, when you move to robotics and when you move to artificial intelligence, then countries like ours with a huge population, we create unemployment by resorting to these technologies. In, uh, in sensitive areas, in areas where human being cannot work, is dangerous for him, one can understand a robot. But in areas where such danger is not there, so you see double-edged. But then the Deuteronomy sets the pattern for Western civilization. They are out to develop everybody. And so if they find that in Tunisia, the ruler is bad and he is not governing properly, I think he needs to be taught how to govern better. And in Afghanistan, people need to be taught how to govern themselves. And in other countries, in Vietnam, they have also to be taught how to uh, be more obedient, if nothing else. So, the exercising dominion with the assumption of evolved evolved self. So that has been the bane. Anyways, it has come to the us also. So in that girls' university, I created a center, Society University Interface Research Center. Center for Society University Interface Research. समाज गांव में समाज विश्वविद्यालय अंतर संबंध केंद्र, वहां पहले हिंदी में करते थे बिकॉज वहां हिंदी समझ आती थी, टू द ग्रेट discomfiture of the vice chancellor and daily educated teachers, that the girls didn't understand English. And what also troubled them was that instead of saying good morning, they said namaskar sir, ram ram ji sir. So that troubled them. So they were backward people, you see, sort of backward people who needed to be brought forward. There, so this gave me the idea that center, the social science teacher there, girl, young lady, in fact, class fellow of my daughter, so like a daughter, but totally from Delhi School of Social Work, that the rural people have to be developed, विकास, उनका विकास करना है, उनको माताओं को सिखाना है. So we used to interact with villages, and I told the girls and the teacher, you are not going to the village to teach. Please go to the village to learn from the old ladies. The old village women are a great knowledge resource. They know water management, they know energy management, they know economic management, marriage of a daughter. They are masters of craft. They know how to sew and knit, and they are masters in pickling. They make all kinds of, food. They are masters of cooking, you know. And when harvesting is being done, they have a role. When seeds are being planted, they have a role. So I told them, kindly learn from them. And later on, sir, it may sound strange. Instead of sending our girls and teachers to the villages, I started inviting village old women to the university to lecture to the girls. And it was a very healthy experience. Very healthy experience. So, colonized people, colonizing has something to do with education, with our education. The single cause of the colonized mind is the, how many years? 1835 to 65, 165 and 22. 187 years, our education has been on one page policy document, one page, the English Education Act, 1835. It were very simple because I am a great admirer of Macaulay because of his clarity of what he needed to do for his country and for the efficacy with which he did it. Just as I am also a great admirer of Rudyard Kipling, the imperialist. Well, he didn't invent imperialism, he was born when England was imperialistic. But admirer of Kipling for the way, in spite of being belonging to the imperial, the way he understood the Indian people, the way he wrote about them with great love, great love. Of course, he writes about many things which we don't like, but unfortunately, what he says about us is even today true. So the truth is unpleasant. So the 1835 is very simple. What did they want to do? They wanted a class of interpreters. Interpreters. They use the word interpreter. हिंदी में हम कहेंगे दलाल. Those who will sell the ruler's ideas to the masses. You see? And convince them and communicate with them. So they wanted to create interpreters. Now these interpreters, as we all know, I am repeating what everybody knows, but it bears repetition. They look like everybody else, Indian, but in their opinions, values, morals, and intellect. They are very important. Opinions. ये ठीक है, ये ठीक नहीं है. Oh, no. I don't accept this. Values. Well, you see values. Success is a value. You have success. So the world today is full of successful people. Generally unhappy, but successful people. Is one value. There are many other values. The third, morals. Morals. The notion of daya, dharam ka mool hai, kindness to others. Not taking away what does not belong to you. All that morality. Morals. If that was the morality, not to take away, then on the Thames, if you go to London, you have the custom house even today, where ships laden with timber, the more expensive than anything else, and bars of gold ships laden with bars of gold used to come to that custom house, and the records are still there. So they took away from us what didn't belong to them. So the morals, intellect, buddhi. Now, people who have read, let's say, Mandukya Upanishad or even Kathopanishad, you see, buddhi is the in us, in our thought, in thinking, the the Jivatma is the owner of this body, which is a chariot owner. And mind, man, is the driver. Man is the, man is the, man is the, no, man is not the driver. Man is the लगाम जो के घोड़े को भगाता है. And buddhi is the driver. Buddhi is what controls the mind. So it doesn't let it go astray. It doesn't let it go this way or that. The senses are the horses, and the objects of senses are the road that we cover. Now, buddhi, intellect, an intellect which controls wrongdoing, an intellect which controls your philosophy of life. As against that, the intellect, how to control these people, how to rule these people, how to divide these people, how to send Tilak to Andaman or Aurobindo to the French colony, and later Jinnah into separating from them. How to do that? That intellect which had them to. So they needed interpreters, and I feel we people today, we educated people, we are today also interpreters of the Western values, morals, intellect for the masses. For the masses. When we do something Indian, it is, it's like a ethnic dress पहन ली. It's a fashion. It is something which we are doing, which we want to do to show that we are different from others like us. But the genuine, moving away, genuine immersion in the alternative civilization is not there. Today also, I mean, look at the debates, look at all this that has been going on. A country, a people, whether Hindus or Muslims, who are deeply religious, the masses, they are being told that no, secular. Dharma, for us, the Hindus, the religion, it's not religion, it is dharma. No. It is all the dharma, sharma, varma doesn't matter, it doesn't count. You have to be secular. See? So if you don't want not to be dharmika, is to be adharmika. So the very constitution says we have to be not dharmic. We don't have to be dharmic. This is still going on, and this is going on. Look at the notion, concept of nation. The writers of the constitution, they were also victims of Indian education. So they read European history, they read the breaking up of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Bismarck's empire, and the split of Bismarck's empire into nations. 1881, 81, 81, 82. Norway, France, Belgium, Germany, France, one nation, One nation is, what is a nation? One language, one ethnicity, one religion. So our constitution makers, they were in a panic that what to do with India. India is not a nation. We have to make India a nation. So we started nation building. Even in our literature, we started writing, how nation building takes place in literature. Rather than think that the definition is European and not applicable to us, we believed the definition is correct and we are wrong. And we started having one language. And one language that was the political language of the time when India was fighting, not fighting really. India was waiting for freedom. The Hindi of Western UP. So they made it, most leaders came from there. No, one language. 5, 7 years, nobody noticed what had happened. Then suddenly the southern people woke up. They burnt a few buses, threw some stones, and then, we made English the associate language. You see, associate. And when that happened, then, the Kannadigas, the Marathis, they said our languages have history older than English. Our languages have literature as rich as English. We may not have Shakespeare, but we have Baswanna, we have others. So, how come that we don't figure? So we then developed Schedule 8, 8th schedule. Originally 12 languages, today 22, and 37 applications are pending. On one hand, we are proud of diversity. On the other, we are scared of it. And this is the reason why we are scared to make state languages, all the state languages, the medium of education. We are scared. Even this NEP doesn't touch that because we are afraid that if every state gives education in its own language, then India will break apart. Totally stupid. Because the Indian languages having a common Manas Gangotari, the Srota, common Srota, share, Indian languages share vocabulary. And it is not just the words, it is the vocabulary of thought. Indian languages share the vocabulary of thought. Just look at two movements. The movement of translating epics, which started in 10th century with Kamban's Ramayana and ended in 15th century with Shankaradeva translating Valmiki Ramayana by moving right over across country. And look at the vernacularization process, which started Ramanujacharya talking, giving exposition of Brahma Sutras in Tamil. The Chola king asking him to go away. And he went to Mandya. The Mandya king welcomed him, sent him to Malkote, Narsingha Mandir. For 12 years, even today you have his seat there. For 12 years he expounded Brahma Sutra in Tamil. And then Gyaneshwar, Marathi, Hemachandra, Gujarati, and Meera, and Guru, and you go on. And then you look at the Bhakti movement all over India, all different languages, but all carrying the same substance. So, the scare because we, on one hand, we are very proud. We say unity in diversity, which is wrong. In fact, we should talk about variety in unity. It's not diversity in unity. It is variety in unity. And we're scared, so we don't say ek medium Angrezi, lingua franca Angrezi. I mean, how can you have a lingua franca of 9 or 10% of people? And forgetting that in our country, a lingua franca has always evolved on its own, you see. And the language of the traders and the language of the sadhus, for whom there were no political boundaries at any time, they're traveling across. In fact, in the 6th century, by 6th century AD, the Silk Route had carried the Indian vocabulary of thought all over Asia, all over Asia. Hindi, some kind of Hindi, spoken Hindi, call it Hindustani, whatever. Its intelligibility is now more than 80%. It wasn't like that in the 60s. Thanks partly to Hindi films, thanks partly to the general dynamics of the country. If you want a job in different another state from where you belong, you pick up the language. So it's sailed. Anyways, so these are all involved in this colonization and decolonization. Let me get back to what is a colonized mind. What are the features of it? How does the colonized mind think? I will just list a few. First of all, a colonized Indian mind abandons its native philosophical attitude. What is that? You ask any Indian, he will say, sir, जो दिखता है वो पूरा सच नहीं है. You see, जो दिखता है, what is visible, what you see is not the whole truth. It's a very common attitude. Ask anybody. Ask a rickshaw wala, ask कि भैया देखो ये तो है, ये है, पर ये इसका ये नहीं है, ये बहुत है इसके आगे पीछे बहुत है. You see, I am not talking about the शास्त्रायिक प्रतिभाषिक सत्ता, तत्वार्थिक सत्ता, परमार्थिक सत्ता. I'm talking a very common philosophical attitude कि जो दिखता है वो हमेशा पूरा सच नहीं है. आकाश दिखता है, ब्लू स्काई, पर आप उसको हाथ नहीं लगा सकते, वो है नहीं. You go on moving, it's not there. It's not there. So जो दिखता है, जो जिसको फायर फ्लाई कहते हैं, उसमें कोई फायर नहीं है. You see? वो जुगनू जो है उसमें रोशनी है और कोई सोर्स ऑफ लाइट नहीं है. तो देयर इज, एवरीबॉडी विल टेल यू कि जो दिखता है वो पूरा सच नहीं है. कई बार वो सच भी नहीं है, वो सच है ही नहीं. यू नो, रियल लगता है, एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता. यू सी, रियल लगता है पर एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता. एनीवेज, so a kind of subjectivity of all phenomena. This is the Indian point of view. Subjectivity of all phenomena. We all construct our own reality. We don't deny that there is a reality out there. There is a reality. It's real. Hindus do not deny the existence of reality. Nor did Shankaracharya, who was maligned by the English translation when Maya was translated as illusion. Maya is not illusion. Maya is construct. So the world that I say, this world, it's my construct. No two persons construct the same world. This subjectivity of phenomena. कॉफी का कप लीजिए, दो सहेलियां बैठ के कॉफी पिएंगी, एक कहेगी बड़ी बढ़िया कॉफी है, दूसरी कहेगी ये कहाँ बढ़िया है, मैं तुम्हें वहां लेके जाऊंगी, वहां बढ़िया कॉफी. We can't agree on any, we differ on everything. No two human beings can have the same perspective or perception because they don't occupy the same space. Their egocentric space is different. So everything is different. So this is first. An educated Indian gives up or is made to give up or does not get the opportunity to acquire the traditional philosophical attitude. of the subjectivity of all phenomena. That's one. Second, uh, there is a kind of, in every Indian, every, basically you see, it is the Sanatan civilization. I often say Indian civilization is knowledge centered. Indian culture is value oriented. Indian society is kartavya parak, duty oriented, not like the constitution, fundamental rights. In no family, the eldest son will talk about his fundamental right. He will only talk about his duty. If there are younger sisters to marry, he will marry them all. If there is a brother to be educated, he will educate him. He will never say, I earn the money. Why should I spend on others? So our Samaj is duty oriented. And our Chetana across India, there is a consciousness of a unified entity, ekatamta. It is cultural. Partly culture, by culture I mean it is of thought, art, music and all that. But you see, there is an ekatamta. And there is a, if you want to define the identity of this civilization, it is what the Sanatan, the Shashwata, which is so open, which accepts everything. Everything is accepted. You see, the Swavikalpaja Vada Bauddha Mata. Everybody, given his own predilection, creates his own Vada, system of belief. All are right, says Bhartrihari. But Ekatma Buddhi, a unifying intellect, Sarvavad Avirodhini, there is a unifying intellect which is not opposed to any particular way of thinking. This common, what is this unified sensibility, consciousness? That is, all beings, all life is sacred. All life is sacred. All beings are sacred. ये फुस फुस करके वो ब्लैक एंड रेड लगा के मच्छर मारना और ये सब चीजें मारना जो वैसे भी शहरों की बीमारियां हैं. ऑल्दो वी ब्लेम हरियाणा फॉर द दिल्ली पराली, कि दिल्ली में बड़ा पोल्यूशन है क्योंकि हरियाणा के गांव में पराली जलाते हैं, और क्योंकि दिल्ली में पोल्यूशन है तो बीमारियां फैलती हैं. वी फॉरगेट टू आस्क कि जहां पराली जलती है वहां तो बीमारियां नहीं होती. वहां तो बीमारियां नहीं होती, बीमारियां तो यहाँ होती हैं. तो उनकी पराली से यहाँ बीमारी कैसे होती? There is this, all life is sacred. Even today, you will find people who will not kill. कॉकरोच को भी नहीं मारेंगे, नहीं मारते, उड़ा देंगे चीज को, भगा देंगे, मारेंगे नहीं. But this sanctity of life, you see, this is what our mothers, they feed the sparrows. Our fathers, grandfathers, they feed the ants, particularly in the rainy season. They go searching in the evening for ant holes. उनको जाके चीनी आटा डालते हैं क्योंकि उनको भी. I once had an old vegetable seller, old man, who when he brought vegetable, he will sit down and he will take out about 100 grams or 200 grams of cheese and make small pieces. And so many mice and rats will come and they will eat. And I asked him once, Baba ji, ये क्यों करते हो? Why do you do this? He said, भाई इनको भी तो खाना है ना, they have to eat. इनको मैं खिला देता हूँ, फिर ये कोई उत्पात नहीं मचाते. Then they do nothing. Everything by vegetable, everything remains intact. They don't. So this sanctity, sacredness of life, the educated Indian abandons it. What is sacred? We don't know what is sacred. because we go by the sacredness of the Western mind, where God is distant. There is a line between God. God is outside the creation. And there is a line between God and us. If we cross that line, it is transgression. And we speak against him, it is heresy. But here, हम कृष्ण के कृष्ण हमारा, तो हमको तो उसका घोड़ा बना ले, कृष्ण का घोड़ा बना ले. There is no transgression. There is no heresy. God is a friend. God is not a constable. You see? But the point, sanctity comes from where? From where does sacredness of everything come? It comes from the concept of Brahman. Brahman, Vedantic Brahman, because Brahman is energy principle. It is immanent in Brahmanda. See the word is telltale. The egg-shaped universe, the elliptical universe. The entire universe is permeated by this energy principle. And our conception of universe is, it is a mass of energized matter, in which forms arise and forms collapse, and new forms are born anew. I was not there 100 years ago. I'll not be there another 20 years later. I am in between. I'm a bubble, a form that has appeared in the energized matter, and it will collapse. Now, because the Hebraic God is outside the universe, he observes, but our Brahman is immanent in everything, is present in everything. सब जीव में, सब जीवों में है. So सब जीव sacred है, sanctity है उनकी. अब ये इतनी बात तो समझने समझाने के लिए सिलेबस से बाहर निकल के, करिकुलम से बाहर निकल के उपनिषद पढ़ने पड़ेंगे, तब थोड़ी सी बात समझ आएगी. दूसरा, थर्ड, you see, again, because sanctity involves another thing. You see, what imparts sanctity is the real self of everything, the self, the life principle in everything. And that life principle, you see, when in Chandogya Upanishad, there is a description of how, when a mother conceives, how the embryo develops, and how on a sudden day it starts ticking. The life enters. No science yet knows from where that ticking comes and how. It starts ticking. And it is that ticking, that life principle, which is sacred. Therefore, in Indian thought, this abortion is looked at in three ways: from the point of view of law, from the point of view of the mother society, and from the point of view of morality, ethics. Abortion is bhroon hatya. It's a murder because life has begun. And socially, Kautilya gives the right to the mother. She alone can decide if she has been, let's say, has been unfortunate as a small girl, raped, and she bears a child. Kautilya gives her the right, to decide, not the society, nobody else. And interestingly, legally, in Arthashastra, punishment for raping an unmarried, particularly nubile girl, is death with torture. Death with torture, because there are two kinds of death penalties in Arthashastra: simple hanging, shooting, and all that, and death with torture. Death with torture is the punishment. Our Burma Commission sat for 3 years, was given a government bungalow, a car, and so many offices. After 2, 3 years, he produced a document, which had psychology, explanatory psychology. And our judges recently, a man who had been given life imprisonment for raping a minor girl, our judges recently reduced his life punishment to a few years, because they said we have to give a chance to a man to improve himself, evolve, the evolutionary, the social Darwinism. You see, in our, in the Hindu thought system, the karma theory is unique. You see, the Greeks, when they fall on bad times, they blame fate. When the Christians fall on bad time, they blame original sin. But when a Hindu falls on bad time, he has nothing to blame but himself. मेरे कर्मों की गति है, कर्मों की गति न्यारी, और कर्म का फल तो भुगतना पड़ेगा. You cannot blame God. In that celebrated dialogue in Mahabharata between Draupadi and Yudhishthir, this question is debated. Who is responsible? The immediate point is, who is responsible for a dharmic Yudhishthir and the Pandavas spending 12 years in the forest, exiled, eating only plain rice, while Duryodhan is in his palace, plush bed, eating from utensils of silver and saying, I know dharma, I'm not interested. But the dharma, Yudhishthir, Dharmika, and his brothers, each one of them had the power to upturn the Kaurav Sabha. Each one had the strength. They would have turned upside down the Kaurav Sabha. But when the eldest brother left with his eyes down, each one of them followed him. The Draupadi says this to him. Says, you are dharma, follow dharma. But what has dharma given you? And I can't help, it is not pertinent here, but I can't help repeating Yudhishthir's reply. I have never followed dharma in my life, thinking of what I will get out of it. Those who follow dharma from that point of view, वो धर्म के व्यापारी हैं. They are traders in virtue. मैंने कभी भी धर्म का रास्ता इसीलिए नहीं अपनाया कि मुझे मिलेगा क्या. And then it is कि मनकों की माला टूटती है और मन के बिखरते हैं. नदी के किनारे का पेड़ गिरता है, ये सब भगवान की इच्छा से होता है. तो जो आपके साथ हो रहा है, से द्रौपदी, वो भी उसकी इच्छा से हो रहा है. That means even God is not interested in dharma and adharma. And then Yudhishthira explains at length. No, it's not God, it's karma. Our karma. He says, I played. जुआ तो मैंने खेला जुआ. भगवान ने नहीं कहा मुझे कि तुम जुआ खेलो. See? Anyways, I'm going too far. The point is, there is that spiritual self, the transcendental and the material. They go together. And intertwining is what makes everything sacred. So much so that you all must have known when we were young, if there was a printed paper lying or a piece of paper or a book lying down, We were, and we touched it with our feet. The mother will say, इसको पैर लगा रहा है, इसको उठा के माथे पे लगाओ. You see? And the 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 Vespa scooter, which in the 50s or 60s served a man greatly, the man has moved on to Mercedes, but the Vespa scooter still stands in his courtyard. The reverence, Shraddha, sanctity of what something or someone has done for you. That's why, when a Hindus श्राद्ध करते हैं, तो आखिरी श्राद्ध भीष्म पितामह का करते हैं. भीष्म पितामह had no children, but is a grand sire because he has contributed to the very making of our civilization and of ourself. So we are told by our elders that जब भी भगवान के सामने थैंक्स करो, you should always thank some unknown persons who have contributed to your growing up. Maybe you were as a child walking on the road, you were looking this side, and a cycle or a bullock was about to hit you, and some man, just pushed you aside and saved you. So, how many people have contributed to my growing up? To be thankful to them. So this is the principle of sanctity. We have abandoned all these things, you see. Now it's I. I have done this, my project, my initiative, and all that. Third, the religious tolerance, the principle of tolerance. बहुत बात होती है. Tolerance, in the sense that the very concept, it implies the very concept of vidhata, dissimilarity, not being alike and yet being one. 84 लाख योनियां, 84 लाख, कोई ऊपर नीचे नहीं है. कर्मों के अनुसार अगले जन्म में क्या बनेंगे या पिछले जन्म में क्या थे, we don't know. It's a very powerful theory. It could be a construct. I don't deny. I also know, after all, what was Mahatma Buddha's great contribution. Mahatma Buddha's great contribution was that he shifted the Hindu mind from ritual to reason. And Buddhist logic, Shachar Baski का किताब, सारी दुनिया में बुद्धिस्ट लॉजिक पढ़ाया जाता है. Reason is a very important epistemology for us, but we have not made it superordinate. तर्क बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, तर्क और अनुमान के लिए, बट तार्किक बुद्धि को बहुत अच्छी बुद्धि नहीं माना जाता. आम भाषा में कहते हैं बड़ा बहसी है, बहुत बहस करता है. And Bhartrihari in Vakyapadya says, Tark cannot tell you why the well water is cold in summer and warm in winter. Tark cannot tell you how one diamond is superior to the other. Tark cannot tell you which tea leaf is superior to other. A tea taster finds it not by logic. And a diamond parkhi, हीरे का पारखी, वो तर्क से नहीं जाता. So there are domains we agree accept which are outside this. So there is this assumption of things which we may not know. We do not know. But unlike some people who think what they don't know is not worth knowing, and it's not worth knowing at all, we believe that everything is valuable. every cognition is valuable. Although we are advised by our elders, by our Shastras, to examine every cognition very carefully, because no two pen, no two persons have the same cognition about an object, and the same man does not have the same cognition about that object in the morning and in the evening. He may change. So cognitions have to be examined very carefully, but they are not to be rejected. Not to be rejected. Nobody's cognition is to be rejected. So Vipra Baudha Vadanti. वो तो बड़ा common है. There is a truth out there, but we don't know what it is. Everybody predicates in his own way. And next, Indians have a kind of civility, average Indian, a humility, civility born of humility. I will give you an example. When I was traveling to that village, 100 kilometers from Delhi, I used to drive my own car. And my Mrs. wife used to sit next to me. I was 70-year-old, she was 70-year-old. We looked 70-year-old. And we used to go through a village, a town, small town. At the end of the town, there was a bridge, and to cross that bridge and then go on. But one day, there was a jam, traffic jam. And we halted, and I had a selection committee in the university. So I parked the car and left. An SUV came from the other side. It returned from that jam. And in that, some jats were sitting. And there were 1 or 2 old jats and 3, 4 young, and a young one was driving. So as the car came, suddenly that SUV turned towards us. And an old man came out and asked me, okay, where you want to go? I said, I want to go to Kanpur Kala, sir. I am in that university. There is a jam and I have to read. He says, follow us. You follow us. And through intricate village lanes, his was a big wheeled SUV, but they drove slowly, every time looking back that I am following. After about 24 kilometers, they reached their village. So they stopped. And again the old man came out, another man came out. He said, sir, this is our village. Now this road straight 7 kilometers will take you to your Kanpur Kala. But before you move, please come and have tea with us. Have something. कुछ खा के जाइए. I said, नहीं जी, लेट हो गए हैं. बहुत कहा, कुछ खा के जाइए. नहीं. Then he said to his son, you leave them right up to the university. You see, university. I said, sir, अब तो सीधा रास्ता है, it is straight. What is the problem? He said, no, you are old. I saw your Delhi number on your car, Delhi number, and I saw you are outsider, and you will have problem. So even if it is straight, suppose there is some problem in the way, so he will have. So that gentleman left us there. See, this is a civility born of great humility. And sir, you will find it in all parts of India. All parts of India. If you go to a tea shop and you are dressed like a city man, the tea shop owner, he will say, "Aiye, aiye." His bench will be very clean. But before he asks you to sit, he will take his gamcha and again wipe the bench and say, sit down. Sit down. This I have experienced in a village near that साउथ में क्या एयरपोर्ट है, कालड़ी के पास शंकरा गांव में. I have experienced this in Garo Hills, and last I experienced it at 11 in the night when I was traveling from Calcutta to Kadam. Same attitude. They will wipe this and say, sit down. There is a civility born of humility. Humility is more important. The other man is more important than I am. For me, that. Then, sir, education. What is education for us? Now, I'll tell you something. In the same village, there was a young teacher with me, Ajit Singh, a very tall, handsome Jat. So he and I went out to have tea. We sat down, and there was an old Jat sitting there. So we were talking. He asked this young Jat, young boy, what do you do? क्या काम करे से? क्या काम करते हो तुम? उसने कहा जी मैं पढ़ाता हूं. अरे वो तो ठीक है, पर काम क्या करते हो? मैं पढ़ाता हूं, आई टीच. अरे वो तो ठीक है, काम क्या करते हो? See, teach what? That is more important. What do you teach? क्या करते हो? क्या सिखाते हो? तुमसे पढ़ के कौन क्या जाता है? Our notion of education, the student learns not only what the teacher teaches in the class, but he learns by looking at the teacher. He learns by the way the teacher walks. He learns by his values. He learns by the way he talks in the class or outside. He learns by how the teacher talks to people. It's a total Guru Shishya, the teacher and the student. There is a particular relationship. I experienced sometime back, many years back now, and Ananya Bajpayee brought some American students, and she conducted something, and she took me to Bangalore, and we were having breakfast. I was sitting alone, and then some Indian American boy, young boy, came, sat next to me, and said, "Hello." I said, "You kind of like teaching?" He asked me, "You like teaching?" Ananya listened to the question. She immediately came and she told him to move away, to go away. No Indian student will ask these questions. आपको अच्छा लगता है? आप करते क्या हो? I guess, I appreciated the knife. I appreciate the knife because, it helps me spread the butter on the bread. So I appreciate the knife. This kind of civility, which is one of the part of this teacher-student relationship. It's not a money transaction. It's not a monetary transaction at all. It's a very different transaction. And secondly, education for us meant that the student put in his mind some key shastras, ideas. You see, Bhakti Kavi Kabir ke dohe, Chubani yaad. A Panwadi will sing to you Ramcharitmanas. A Calcutta boatman will sing to you the Tagore songs. But me, Professor Kapoor, when I try to sing Kabir Doha, I will utter one line and I will look this way and that. Can somebody suggest the second line? The second line. Can I see that? You see? So this is the characteristic we have a particular, in our education, traditional education, the epics have a particular place because the epics contain characters who are ideal for us, who are our ideals. So they have a practical particular place. As you know, they have no place in our education these days. Quickly again, basis of basis of ethics. The basis of ethics for for us are not commandments, not commandments. हमारे जो जीवन मूल्य हैं, व्यक्ति के जीवन मूल्य, अर्पण, समर्पण, तर्पण, और समाज के जो मूल्य हैं, उत्सव, उपवास, उपासना, these values do not come to us as commandments. The meek shall inherit the earth. Judge not lest ye be judged. No, they don't come as commandments. They come to us from a very deep understanding that your neighbor is you yourself. You are your own friend and you are your own enemy. Brahma atam ekatva bodhena moksha siddhayati na anyatha. Shankaracharya. It is when you realize your oneness with all that you will be liberated by no other means. In Bhaja Govindam he says, पानिनी के धातु पाठ याद कर लो, उससे मोक्ष नहीं मिलेगा. शब वाग वैखरी शब्द झरी शास्त्र व्याख्यान, ये सब कर लो, इससे मोक्ष नहीं मिलेगा. जब आपको ये रियलाइजेशन होगी that you are one with everyone else. The Bhagavad Gita says to see yourself in others and others in yourself. Therefore, not do to others what you will not like others to do to you. So this is from there that our values come. And Jnana, knowledge, is power. That is the Western metaphor. Our metaphor is knowledge is purifier. It is by purifying it gives you power. But this is a power over your own self. So we, from our childhood, are advised to control not only our action, even movement of our limbs. अगर बहुत ऐसे ऐसे करके चले तो ग्रैंडफादर से ये क्या ऐसे बाजू मटका रहा है. If you stand there and start laughing when elderly people are talking, they will say क्यों दांत दिखा रहा है खड़ा होके यहाँ. You see, I remember once in JNU when I was the dean. When I became the dean, I earned the reputation of being a headmaster. One day I went into the common area and I found a boy standing like this with his buttons open, coat ka, or coat aise or aise. So I went and I took his arm down. I put his coat together and tied the button and I said, this is not a garden. सिमट के रहो, सिमट के, चलना भी सिमट के, बोलना भी सिमट के, कर्म भी सिमट के करना है. Control over all these things. I think I have taken too much time. I have, let me just make a few sentences that this is colonized mind and the cause is the education and the solution is in the Central Institute of Indian Languages. If you want to decolonize the Indian mind, just do one thing. Make state languages the medium of instruction. You have to do nothing else. Just make that. Automatically, your own knowledge will come in, your texts will come in. It will not break the country because all Indian languages share the kinds of things that I am talking about. They all share these things. Nothing of these things is alien to anyone. And when Indians use their own language, learn through their own languages, they will acquire a shared value system, a shared ideas. and people will come closer to each other. It is English which divides. Indian languages will unite. Unfortunately, NEP, which has been lauded for three things. One, making Indian languages medium. Second, Indian knowledge part of the content. And third, promoting Indian languages. But I'm sorry, all this has been done with great diffidence. Darte darte. Wherever possible, kindly read that NEP. Wherever possible, the mother tongue, that concept, I think somebody didn't tell them that that's not the correct concept. But anyways, by that they meant the language spoken in the area. Wherever possible, the mother tongue shall be the medium till class 5 and maybe 8 and maybe wherever possible. So English is possible everywhere, but Indian languages are possible only somewhere. Again, you're creating class. You see, there'll be those who will learn through English and will those who will learn through Indian languages. And you will be doing nothing, no change, no change, no liberation, no knowledge content will come. You can set up any number of IKS units, you can syllabus committees, you can set up curriculum committees. Nothing will happen unless you teach the students in their own language from class 1 to research. Class 1 to research. In our 4-volume language report, we have made these recommendations. It was a 20-member committee, but unfortunately, it was not politically correct. Its recommendations or whatever, it was shelved. And by chance, the last but one education minister happened to talk about things, called me and some others, and we were able to convince Indian knowledge and this. But Indian knowledge, how will Indian knowledge come? Through English. Which books, which disciplines, what texts? How do you, are you going to make the Indian knowledge icing on the cake? Or are you going to make it the matrix? And the other knowledge, Chinese, European, you see, we've been saying Eurocentric, wrong. Indian education has not been Eurocentric. I wish it were. We would have read German philosophers. We would have read French. We would have read Norwegian sagas. It was Anglo-American centric education. It was not Eurocentric. So how do you get away? How do you bring in? How will you do that? You can create any number. I will end with my recommendation is very clear, and CIL should work for it. Make state languages the medium of instruction. Lord Macaulay in 1835, I think at the end of March, it was signed, and next day it was implemented. And Macaulay was asked, my friend Macaulay, because he knew what he wanted and he knew how to do it. You see, he was not being, diffident, and he was asked, would this create problems? He said, yes. But then the problems are for the departments of education to handle. We are framing the policy. We have to frame the policy. The policy is we have to produce Indians who are not only Indians in appearance, but in their opinions, values, morals, and intellect are Indian. And this you will be able to do only if you teach them in their languages. I will not quote Aurobindo. You have all read Aurobindo, that if a community loses its language, it loses its voice. You see, it loses its voice. And I will give an example which I gave in a cave meeting, that in the villages in the winter, when our grandmothers and mothers, they knit sweaters, the wool gets enmeshed. Wool जो है उलझ जाती है, उलझ जाती है. And the wise old woman with great concentration searches for that one thread which when she pulls, the entire thing unravels. Your education is enmeshed wool. You want to do many things, but the one thread you pull and everything will fall in place. And that one thread is make Indian languages the medium of all Indian languages, state language, medium of instruction from class 1 to 12, and make it suddenly. Make it by an order. Nothing will happen. Everything will fall into place. Thank you very much. Namaskar.